My grandfather was a farmer. He used to say, "Hard work is the only honest way." He planted every seed by hand, watered every row with a bucket, and pulled every weed himself. And for a long time I thought that was the only way to succeed. Let me tell you the story of two farmers, Thomas and Richard. It will change how you think about work forever. Thomas was a man who lived by his grandfather's code. From sunrise to sunset he worked. His hands were calloused, his back ached constantly, but he wore his exhaustion like a badge of honor. His wife Sarah would watch him with worried eyes. "Thomas, you're killing yourself," she'd say. There has to be a better way. But Thomas would just shake his head. "Success requires sacrifice. Hard work never fails. I just need to work harder." The neighboring farmers would watch him and say, "That man works like 3 men." And they were right. If hard work alone could make someone rich, Thomas would have been a millionaire. But the truth was, despite working twice as many hours as anyone else, Thomas's farm barely produced enough to survive. Every harvest was a struggle. And worst of all, he had no time, no energy, and no life outside of his fields. Right next door lived a man named Richard. Same age, same size farm, but something was different. Richard worked from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., just 6 hours a day. He used modern irrigation, hired help during harvest, and spent his evenings reading, relaxing, and traveling with his family. And somehow, Richard's farm produced twice what Thomas's did. This fact haunted Thomas every single night. Why was he failing? One brutal summer, a drought hit the valley. Water became scarce. For Thomas, this meant only one thing: work even harder. He started waking up at 3 a.m. instead of 4. He carried water buckets from a distant well, making 50 trips a day. His body screamed in protest, but he pushed through, repeating to himself, "Hard work never fails." Meanwhile, Richard simply adjusted his irrigation system to run during the cooler hours, losing almost no water to evaporation. On the 15th day of this grueling routine, something inside Thomas broke. He was carrying his 40th bucket when his vision blurred and his legs gave out. The bucket slipped, spilling precious water into the dust. He collapsed, gasping for air. Sarah found him there, too exhausted to even stand. The doctor's words were a cold shock. "Mr. Thomas, your body is shutting down. You're dehydrated, sleep-deprived, and on the edge of a heart attack. If you continue like this, you won't see the next harvest. Not because of the drought, but because you'll be dead." That night, Thomas stared at the ceiling, feeling a crushing defeat. "I did everything right," he whispered to Sarah. "I worked harder than anyone. I sacrificed everything. Why am I failing?" Sarah held his hand. "Maybe, my love, hard work isn't the answer. Maybe there's something you haven't learned yet." 3 days later, Thomas did something his pride had never allowed. He knocked on Richard's door. Richard opened it with a surprised smile. "Thomas, I heard about your collapse." "Come in, please." They sat on Richard's porch, overlooking his thriving green fields. "Richard," Thomas began, his voice humble for the first time. "I work twice your hours, but you produce double the results. How?" Richard was quiet for a moment, then stood up. "Come, let me show you something." In his tool shed, Richard picked up 2 axes, one old and dull, the other sharp and gleaming. He handed the dull axe to Thomas. "Imagine 2 woodcutters," he said. "The first one swings his axe for 12 hours straight, believing more effort means more trees. Try it." Thomas swung. The axe bounced off the log, barely making a dent. After 10 swings, he was breathing hard. Then Richard took the sharp axe. 1 swing, and it bit deep into the wood. 3 more swings, and the log split in 2. "The second woodcutter," Richard continued, "works for 10 hours. But every hour he stops for 10 minutes to sharpen his axe. His competitor mocks him. 'You're wasting time. Keep swinging.' But by the end of the day, the second woodcutter has chopped down twice as many trees." He looked Thomas right in the eyes. "You are the first woodcutter, my friend. You've been swinging a dull axe for years, wondering why your hands are bleeding but the tree isn't falling." Richard then explained his 3 principles. First, systems over effort. "I don't carry water in buckets. I installed a drip irrigation system. It cost money up front, but now it works automatically while I sleep. You spend 6 hours hauling water. My system does the same job in 10 minutes. Second, focus over hustle. I grow only 2 crops that thrive in our soil. You grow 5 different crops, spreading your attention thin. I master 2 things, you struggle with 5. I produce excellence, you produce mediocrity. And third, rest is part of the strategy. My brain is fresh every day because I sleep 8 hours and take breaks. I make better decisions, I spot problems early. You're so exhausted you can't think straight. So you make mistakes that cost you more time to fix. Richard placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder. You're not failing because you don't work hard enough. You're failing because you only know how to work hard. There's a difference between being busy and being effective. Hard work is the foundation, but hard work without strategy is just suffering. It's time to sharpen your axe. Thomas returned home with something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He didn't rush to his fields. Instead, he sat down with Sarah and a notebook. The next morning, he worked for 4 hours, then stopped. He spent the rest of the day researching irrigation systems. Within 2 weeks, he sold an old tractor and bought a basic drip system. Installing it took 3 days, but once it was running, his watering time dropped from 6 hours a day to just 20 minutes. He invested that saved time into planning, studying his soil, and improving his strategy. He cut his crops from 5 down to 2, focusing on what grew best and sold for the most. But the biggest change wasn't on the farm, it was in his life. For the first time in years, Thomas had dinner with Sarah. They laughed. He had energy to play with his kids. He started exercising. His friends noticed. "Thomas, you're working less, but you look happier, healthier." He'd smile and say, "I'm working smarter." 6 months later, the harvest came. Thomas's fields produced 40% more than his best year ever. Not because he worked harder, but because every hour was strategic and effective. He now worked 7 hours a day instead of 15, but those 7 hours produced more than his 15 ever did. This story isn't just about farming. It's about every single one of us who believes that suffering equals success. That if you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. Here's the truth our culture doesn't always tell you. Hard work is necessary, but it's not enough. The most successful people don't work the most hours. They work the smartest hours. Remember these 3 things. First, before you work harder, ask if a system can work smarter. Don't carry buckets if you can build a pipeline. Don't brute force what strategy can solve. Second, focus beats hustle. Stop doing everything. Master a few things that create the most value. And third, rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's a part of it. A tired mind makes expensive mistakes. So here's your challenge. Look at your work this week. Find the one task you spend the most time on. Ask yourself, is there a smarter way? Then, take one afternoon, just one, to build that smarter system instead of just working harder. Stop swinging the dull axe. It's time to sharpen it. If this story hit home for you, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs permission to work smarter. Drop a comment below. What's one task you're going to optimize this week? Let's share strategies. Until next time, remember, strategy beats exhaustion every single time.